Radical Radio Collective.
Good afternoon, listeners. You are tuned into 4ZZZ on 102.1 FM, and this is Eco Radio, Australia's longest-running peace and environment radio show. We are taking over the middle of the day in the middle of your week airways.
The middle of day.
The middle of day?
The middle of the day.
The middle of the day.
middle of the day.
Yeah, I don't know. I would assume that the day's pronouns would be gender neutral, so that's why I went with it anyway. And we're also middle of the month, roughly.
Yep.
Yeah. My name is Zack, and my pronouns are he, they, and I'm joined by...
Issy, it's been a while.
Yeah.
She, they, but hello, I am back.
I'm so glad to have you back, even though you were just on
I was just kept getting rusted 1 o'clock shifts, so guess who's back?
Yeah.
Yay!
So we're going to be talking about giant burrowing cockroaches.
Hell yeah.
That sounds really intimidating, but they're pretty cool, and they are native only to Queensland.
Sick.
Yeah, these are the heaviest cockroaches in the world. They can weigh 35 grams.
And for people who tuned into no idea, what was that type of species called? I talked about it in the hermit crab segment of my Weird Science. So if you want to text in that answer, you're going to go to 0420 626 733. That's our text line. Text us about our song earlier. Text us about burrowing cockroaches.
Yeah.
Text us about
anything. Well,
yeah.
Jinx.
Wow, Jinx.
I win.
Oh.
Pinch and a punch later.
Nice.
But we'll also be playing an interview that Andrew Bartlett did with John Tasker, who is the president of the Geographical Society's Spring Hill Walkability Project. And also, I just want to touch on some polystyrene eating beetles at some point, which is pretty cool.
Badass.
Yeah. And just before we go on and play the next song, I want to start off by acknowledging and paying my respects to the custodians of the country on which we broadcast. We are located in the city Magangin on Turrbal Yuggurrupul land. I also want to acknowledge and pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are listening in today. Our radio waves reach Kabi Kabi and Jinnabara country in the north, Waka Waka country in the west. In the east, we pay our respects to the Quandamooka people, and down south, we reach Commonberry, Nagaragwal, Mununjali, Wandjirabara and Yugambeh countries. There is no Crown land. We're going to be talking about giant burrowing cockroaches.
So, when we say giant burrowing cockroaches, how giant are we speaking, Zack?
So, they are actually the heaviest cockroach species in the world. They can weigh up to 35 grams, and they can be like 8.5 centimeters long. So, like, I've got fairly big hands, but that would be like
the size of your palm.
Yeah, size of your palm, or larger perhaps. But I think we have this idea of cockroaches of like things that we don't want around, right? Yeah, just because of like the ones that we get in our house and everything. They're very, very invasive.
Yeah, or association with like rotten or like disgusting conditions.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us a little bit more about these guys.
But there's actually like a lot of native cockroaches in Australia. I think there's about 5,000 or 6,000 species worldwide of cockroach.
Whoa.
But there's only like 3 or 4 that are really that's kind of like that we have that association with like uncleanliness in our house. They're a pest species, they're a nuisance. But there's a lot of like gorgeous cockroach species around, and although like this cockroach itself, it may not be like the most appealing like looks wise, it's still like a native animal, and it's very special to have them around. So they are native to eastern Queensland, kind of like that north of Rockhampton region along the coast, and they can actually live up to 10 years, which is crazy to think for a bug. Which is, yeah.
So that's so cockroaches can graduate year 2?
Cockroaches were around when Obama was president.
Some cockroaches have existed since 2014. That is crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty nifty. But they're actually quite common. They're not like super rare species, just so they're quite cryptic because, as the name suggests, they're burrowing cockroaches. They live most of their life in just like permanent burrows, and these burrows can actually reach up to 1 meter deep. So they're pretty efficient at burrowing too. And interestingly, they're very... I don't know, like important nutrient recyclers, because they eat dead leaves and then they poop it out, and then that stuff can be returned back to the soil. The nutrients can be returned back to the soil. And they have a pretty unique morphology for some of these burrowing adaptations that they have. So they have quite large back legs, and then they have spiny tibia. So tibia, it's the same as like a human tibia, right? So it's like the shin sort of area, the segment of leg directly above the foot, and those kinds of spines help just like shoveling stuff out of the way. And then they also have a shovel-like pronotum. So a pronotum is the first segment on the thorax, and so this is like the bit directly above their head, and this essentially like helps them to shovel some dirt out of the way so they can burrow further and that sort of thing.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's really sick.
It's a neat adaptation. And most adult insects have wings. There's only a few groups that don't have wings as adults, and those are like silverfish, and there's a thing called an archaeognathan. But these guys have secondarily lost their wings. So they've evolved to have wings at one point, as most cockroaches have, but then they've lost them some point just because there's been no beneficial to... nothing beneficial about having wings. And obviously when you weigh 35 grams, it is going to be...
it's going to be hard.
It's going to be hard to, like, get some that support your weight. So they are found from Rockhampton to Cooktown, and they are found in subtropical and tropical biomes, and they're in general like quite adaptable, but they do prefer like eucalyptus woodland and grasslands, but they also can be found in things like rainforests. And they mainly spend their life in their burrow, just chilling out down there in their little house, not harming anyone. They're nocturnal, so they'll mainly get out at night, and they require just like a fair amount of like moisture and humidity, and so they're most often seen when it's raining and during the wet season. During the dry season, they'll mostly just chill inside their burrow, and it may occasionally leave to get some leaves so they can bring it back and munch on them.
Nice.
And above ground they have two main behaviours. One is the foraging, which I just mentioned. They go out, collect leaf litter and bring it back to their burrows so they can eat. And the other one is what this paper I read called wandering, where they will walk around randomly and pause for several minutes. And there was a funny quote that this paper had, that they're like, yeah, they didn't seem to be aware of their surroundings. Like they were they're able to just like go directly up to them, and it wouldn't spook the cockroaches away at all. It's funny.
That's iconic.
Yeah, maybe they have that like capacity that bears have, where they can kind of like admire nature. That's what they're doing. They're just like moving to a new spot, and I'm like, gosh darn, isn't the world so pretty? And it's mostly males that wander out that do this like wandering. And some of this is like involved with like searching for mates and that sort of thing. But once, as I mentioned, they are nocturnal, and once it reaches dawn, wandering males may attempt to return to a burrow that is not theirs.
Whoa.
In which case they have a fight. The cockroaches fight each other. And this is because they're mostly solitary, and so they're pretty aggressive to all other cockroaches.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of like fighting behaviors that they display. So they can hiss by like air expulsions from their spiracles. So the spiracles are like an insect's equivalent of like a breathing organ, essentially. So they can hiss, and there's these things called Madagascar hissing cockroaches, which are they're quite closely related to them.
Nice.
But they also barge and butt into one another. So
I was going to say, with that big noggin that they have,
they like shove them out of the way. It's dual purpose. Not only is it good for burrowing, but they can also like flip up the roaches.
Yeah, sick.
And so the cockroaches are oviviparous, and this means that they do they do have eggs, but their eggs hatch internally, and then they and then they kind of I can't remember what it's called. It comes out the back of them alive anyway.
Alive?
Yeah, like the baby roaches are alive because they've hatched internally and then they just like skedaddle out.
Interesting.
Yeah. So most cockroaches you'll find a thing called an ootheca, and praying mantises have this too, which is really interesting because praying mantises are essentially predatory cockroaches, which is really weird to think about. But they have like this egg sac that they'll lay down, and it's a bit weird. It's got like a lot of like, not gunk, sorry, I can't think of the word at the moment.
But that is really interesting that like two species that you wouldn't expect to be related are related through that kind of birthing method.
Yeah. They're each other's like closest relative in terms of like the insect taxonomy, at least. And also, fun fact, termites are technically cockroaches.
my gosh.
Yeah, so they're eusocial, which is like the eusocial is what we call things like ants and wasps, where they live in those colonies. But they've evolved independently of them to kind of like match like that ant lifestyle setup where they've got a queen and everything, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, also a bit weird to think about. They used to be their own like taxa, their own order, but they were recently placed back into the cockroach things about 10-15 years ago, I want to say. But yeah, that's cool. Sorry, go on.
No, I do love that we really aren't fighting the Aussie animal stereotype where we just take bits and pieces of other animals and put them together.
Yeah.
Like a platypus or kangaroo. That's really really interesting.
Yeah, it's fun.
Copy and pasting some of the best features into putting it into one thing and being like, yep, that's it.
Yeah, at least termites are like worldwide, so it's not just an us thing. Yeah, they've got that issue worldwide. So they are also hemimetabolous, and most insects that we think of are things we call holometabolous, where things like beetles, ants, butterflies, they start off as like this small grub sort of thing or larvae, which does not resemble the adult in any way. Then they undergo a complete metamorphosis, so they turn into a cocoon or a pupa, and then they emerge as the adult. And so you can see like the adult doesn't resemble the larvae at all. But with hemimetabolous things, they emerge as like nymphs, which are just miniature versions of the adults without wings. And it is determined that it is an adult when they grow wings, essentially. That's how you can tell like most insects are adults. They have wings. And despite the giant burrowing cockroach's solitary nature, adult females actually show parental care for their little babies, which is really cool. We don't see that a whole lot in insects or like many animals at all, to be honest. The males don't show parental care though. We got deadbeat dads over here.
Burrowing at other burrows.
Yeah, they're being little denizens, not looking after the kids, trying to invade other people's homes. So these nymphs live in the same burrow as their female parent, and the females are actually quite aggressive to other cockroaches. The females that have nymphs, I should say, are quite aggressive to other cockroaches. They like to defend their little babies. And the nymphs remain under the care of the adult for about 6 months or until they can fend for themselves and construct their own burrow.
Nice.
So, yeah, they look after their kids for quite some time, which is pretty cool. And quite surprisingly, I guess, they're pretty popular pets, for insects at least.
Yep. I did some Googling off air, including pulling up the burrowing cockroaches Wikipedia, and then just a little segment at the bottom saying they're very common in Brisbane to be had as a pet.
Yeah. So they're easy to look after. They can't fly or move fast, and they don't require a big tank. They just chill in there, you know. They just need like sand 2 to 10 centimeters deep with access to leaves for food, but also maybe some leaves and sticks to build their burrow. They eat dead eucalyptus leaves. They will not eat alive ones whatsoever, but they also eat some fruit and veg.
Oh.
So maybe a good composting system you could set up there. And they need humidity, but not too much, as otherwise mold can develop. And they don't mind being handled, and they don't bite. They're just, you know, super easy to look after.
So if you want an easy Christmas present this Christmas, get yourself a burrowing
But don't forget, a burrowing cockroach is a 10 years. It is not a Christmas present. It is a 10-year long commitment.
Yeah.
Overall, I've written here they're just big chillers.
Nice.
They like hanging out. You can pick them up, and you can potentially scare some people by sneaking around and just aggravating them a little bit so they'll hiss
Surely
violently.
we can start a petition. Dear station manager, may we please have a burrowing cockroach for Christmas? Kind regards, the Eco Radio team.
That'd be really cute. We could have got one. I don't know if we could have them in the studio.
Do they count as food or drink?
No.
So-
do the eucalyptus leaves don't count as food either.
Food, but if it's not for us, then I think we were alright.
Yeah.
We'll see how we go.
Yeah. Anyway, that's
Thanks
all
for
I've
that,
got on
Zack.
the
That's
giant
really
burrowing
sick.
cockroaches. They're cool dudes. I don't know.
Nice.
Look up some photos of them because they may or may not appear appealing. I'm not suggesting you eat them. Please don't do that. Yeah,
Nice.
they're quite oval shaped and stuff, and they're just big chillers, big softies.
We're on the Eco Radio, and pleasure today talking with John, the President of the Geographical Society of Queensland, Royal Society, no less. Thanks for chatting to Eco Radio.
Pleasure to be here.
I suppose for starters, we'll talk about a specific project that I think a lot of our listeners will be interested in, but just for starters, very quick snapshot about the Geographical Society.
Sure. So Royal Geographical Society of Queensland's been around for over 100 years now, and we've been in Spring Hill for a few years. We really have a broad focus in our activities with public lectures, seminars and webinars, in addition to then projects and some more geographic research activity, as well as tours and trips both within Queensland and Australia and post-COVID back overseas.
So a lot of people, when they hear geography, think about rivers and mountains and maybe big water catchments and stuff, but this project we're going to talk about briefly today is very local, very street-based, no rivers at all, not really any mountains, a bit of a hill here and there, but tell us about the project, or one of the projects, but the project about Spring Hill and walkability.
Exactly, yeah. We've been working with the Spring Hill Community Group to undertake a study of walkability and green corridors within the suburb itself, taking the data sets that are available as well as getting out on the streets to survey the street furniture, the shade, how walkable those main corridors are, and then helping to analyse and understand that for some recommendations, hopefully.
So it sort of sounds more like town planning, or what would people think of as town planning than geography? There's a fair bit of overlap.
I like to think of geography as a somewhat unifying subject. I know people's perceptions might be of those physical geography parameters or a big atlas and someone with encyclopedic knowledge of capitals. But at its core, geography brings together both your physical and social sciences and helps to try and analyse those interactions of people and the environments that they live in. So this project's a good example of that, where we're taking those insights from planning, but also from our understanding of demographics and environment on what makes a green and walkable community and corridors that the residents of Spring Hill experience on a daily basis.
Well, I won't ask you the capital of Kazakhstan, but I will ask you a little bit more about this project around Spring Hill. I mean, it sounds simple in a way, like walkability is just easy to get around and perhaps smooth footpaths and nothing blocking them and that sort of thing. But like a lot of things, when you do start drilling into it, there's a fair bit you look at. Maybe just a tiny bit more on that, and I guess also where you hope to go, rather than go, that's an interesting lot of data, we'll do a report or something. But is there some wider aim for the project? Yeah,
I think for the background, we started with desktop analysis, pulling together what data we had. We looked at elevation, slope, where trees we think are and what their canopies are, and then from that the on the ground field survey data has helped validate some of that and gather the more human perspective in those corridors. Our hope is, beyond being a snapshot in time of Spring Hill and its major routes, is to help use this to understand areas that need further improvement and recommendations that can be made to council and government for investment to help improve upon the walkability, and particularly leading into the change we expect the suburb will see between now and 2032. What areas need more work to make sure that they are connected and walkable into the future? And that's why we're working with the community group to help them push for those changes, using the insights that our members and particularly our students and young professionals can bring to that problem.
Planning ahead, it's a novel concept, should be more of it. So more about a package of measures, a holistic package of measures and principles across an entire community or suburb, rather than just a list of grievances about, needs a bus shelter here or fix this pothole type of stuff.
I think we need to see what comes out of the data, but it's certainly, I think, highlighting areas of concern and what should or could be done to help.
And just finally, if people are interested, whether they're locals in or near Spring Hill, such as Triple Z Studios, which are right on the boundary there on St Paul's Terrace, are there places they can go either to just find out more for their own interest, or I think you're still gathering data if people are interested? Another area of citizen engagement, citizen data collection, citizen volunteering in local environmental projects. How do they go about finding stuff out about it and potentially participating?
Yeah, certainly. Do reach out to the Spring Hill Community Group. I know they've got some good web presence. Likewise, the Royal Geographical Society has both our website and social media channels. We're really happy for people to reach out via those and can get in contact, whether for this project or future projects. We're certainly keen to see this grow, potentially to include other locations, and there's always more room for further investigation.
Excellent. Well, good luck for the rest of the project and all that flows beyond. And thanks for taking the time to chat to Eco Radio.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
So that was an interview that Andrew Bartlett did with John Tasker, who is the president of the Geographical Society's Spring Hill Walkability Project. So we really thank you both John and Andrew for supplying that interview for Eco Radio. We want to quickly touch on the polystyrene eating beetles. So
wait, just break this down for us, Zack. Polystyrene eating beetles.
So it's
not polystyrene eating beetles. Beetles that eat polystyrene.
Yes. And
Okay.
it's not like the adult form of the beetle either. It's the larval stage that eats it.
That's cool.
So there was a study from about 2 months ago. I only picked up on it last night though, so that's why we're talking about it now, because it feels perfect for fitting Eco Radio, both in terms of like recycling but also animals,
Yes.
So there is a species of beetle called the lesser mealworm, and its larval stage is a form of a darkling beetle species found in Africa. And they were actually able to find that this mealworm stage is able to eat and digest polystyrene. So their gut bacteria does change significantly compared to a regular diet where the bacteria it has now is like specifically, there's a lot of it to break down that polystyrene. But they can survive completely off of polystyrene. So the stuff that you find in packaging, I don't know, CDs, if people buy CDs now, or records, or just like that plasticky stuff that's used for bracing against things. They aren't as efficient at kind of like breaking it down and eating it compared to like a regular diet, which is expected, and it does have a bit higher of a mortality rate. But they are able to survive completely off of that polystyrene diet. And this has pretty big implications for how we dispose of things like polystyrene, because at the moment they're pretty difficult to recycle. So maybe in the future we're just going to have like a great beetle pit, and we just occasionally have to sacrifice the polystyrene to keep it going.
To keep it going, yeah.
We've gone from like sacrificing people by throwing them at volcanoes to like sacrificing polystyrene to the beetle
Maybe
larvae.
this is the next generation of kids with like all the microplastics.
Yeah, oh my god, so true. Maybe to get rid of the microplastics, we just need to like put beetles larvae inside us.
But now we need to evolve.
Yeah.
To fully digest it.
We need to put some of that, this can inform the gut bacteria that we need to be able to digest it. So maybe just chuck some of that bacteria on us,
Yeah,
new
see how it
capsules,
goes.
yeah, new probiotic gummies, but with
thanks, Zack.
but with like the plastic eating bacteria in it. It'd be hella cool. Yeah, so that's nifty. Again, as well, they can survive off polystyrene, and that means that they will be able to synthesize proteins within their bodies. So we're going to get some hectic macros off it. The polystyrene to gym gains cycle is inevitable.
That is crazy. I believe that this is also a University of Queensland study.
There you go.
So the super local.
Yeah.
And maybe if we get those our burrowing cockroaches in on it as well, we could have a heavyweight champion in the polystyrene eating business.
I don't know if the cockroaches can eat it, but they can try.
We can give them a crack.
Yeah.
Nice. Do we want to jump into another song before we get into Bushcare?
I wanted to say that 4ZZZ is community run.
If you couldn't tell.
It is run by the community for the community. And if you want to ensure that 4ZZZ remains on the air. It costs about $70 an hour for us to keep the lights on. For me and Issy to have a hangout session
On air.
on air, yeah. You can head over to 4ZZZ.org.au/support. You can start at a minimum of $25 a subscription for your pet, and that goes for the whole year. All subscriptions go for the whole year, which I think is important to add, because I have talked to some of my friends about it, and they've been a bit confused about how subscriptions work.
Oh yeah, if it's monthly.
Yeah.
No, this is a yearly subscription. So
Yeah.
you can subscribe your burrowing cockroach for
Or your
$25,
mealworm.
or your mealworm for
Yeah.
$25. If you've got a younger sibling under 18, that's $25. We've got different budgets for different folk. So 4ZZZ.org.au/support. I know easy breezy Christmas present is to get a household subscription for $300. That will cover them up to, I think it is 4 or 5 people for a whole year.
Yeah.
And they get some pretty sweet merch as well. So if you're looking for last minute Chrissy presents, hit that up. And when you subscribe, not only do you get access to discount outlets, you also help keep the lights on. You can get discounts for gigs and for merch. And most importantly, that warm inner glow as well. So 4ZZZ.org.au/support. You can also come and visit us on Barry Parade as well, and we can happily fill it out for you here.
And there is also a prize for subscribing this month, and that is a $200 gift card for Sock Drawer Heroes.
Yes, a lovely trans-owned organisation that focuses on gender-affirming care items. And I think, especially in the week, I believe it's Trans Week at the current moment, is either today or tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Is the start of Trans Week.
Right.
So, very appropriate.
Maybe that's something we can talk about next week on Eco Radio as well.
Most definitely.
We can talk about some I was going to say fish, but that's a bit of a spoiler. About some animals that actually swap genders throughout their lifetime.
That's really sick. I also think as a peace show, it's really important to keep people's hopes up, especially after last week, with in regards to the US election results. Supporting our community is the most important thing that you can do at the moment, especially when hopes and just kind of general positivity is kind of hard at the moment, and it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be mad, but it's you have to get yourself out into that community.
Yeah. And so we are nearing the end of the episode, and
This is live radio, Zach. Come on, nearing the end of the program, I guess.
Episode program. They're pretty.
Whatever.
They can substitute each other pretty well.
Time is a construction, yes.
Yeah, but you know what that means? It's time for the Bushcare Roundup, and I just want to say I should be doing some Manscaped commercials the way I'd be caring for this bush.
For God's sake.
It's a Bushcare Roundup. They've been pulling out weeds, and then they put in trees. It's the Bushcare Roundup.
I can't believe you just said that.
Hey, I asked you for permission last week, and you said it was okay. So,
yeah, you did.
I did, yeah. So, this is why I had to
that's on
check.
me.
Yeah. So, on November the 14th, that is Thursday, we have from 5:30 till 7 p.m, we have a Flying Fox Flyout event, and that one is at Habitat Drive in Redland Bay. Then on Friday the 15th, from 7 till 9, we have the Frog Discovery Walk at Nerang National Park.
On Saturday from 7:30 till 9, we've got the Currumbin Creek Care Group tree planting at Currumbin Valley. At 9:30 till 10:30, we've got creating habitats for our brilliant bees at Queen's Park Environment Education Centre in Ipswich. On Saturday at 2, we've got the 2 to 3, we've got Frog Oasis building backyard habitats at Springwood Park in Springwood. And at 6:30, we've got the Remember Their Names rally in King George Square. So that is talking about women who have been killed in, we've got up to 80 women who have been killed in Australia,
Right.
Related to violence perpetrated often by a man. So if you want to get out and support women and get out and stand against domestic violence, then 6:30 at King George Square on Saturday night.
On Sunday the 17th from 8 till 11 a.m. we have the Friends of Koala Park volunteer event, and that is at Fleay's Conservation Park, Burleigh Heads. From 2 till 4 p.m. we have Bushcare and Beer at Oxley Creek Common, Rockley. Then from 3:30 till 5:30 we have the Yonga Bushcare End of November Working Bee, and that one is at the intersection of Brisbane Corso and Otaki Road, Yeronga. And then from 7 till 8:45 we have the Frog ID Week at Cicada Park in Chapel Hill.
Nice. Don't forget, it is Frog ID week and a bit. So get out there, download the Frog ID app on your phone.
Yeah, all this rainy weather will be very good for the frogs at the moment.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
So get out there, even if it's something even if you think it's common, or if you think it isn't worth noting, it might be.
Yeah.
Just get out there. Take your phone around, see if you can ID some frogs. There is a leaderboard, so if you want to get a little bit competitive,
and some prizes as well. I think there's a prize for first place.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
So don't be scared if you haven't done it for a long time or you've never done it. Super simple. Frog ID on any app store, I believe. And yeah, celebrate Frog Week. If you can't get out there, then at least get to enjoy some of the calls that people have been recording of some very special little frogs.
Yeah. And that is it for Eco Radio this week.
Nice.
Yeah.
Special thanks to you, Zack, for organising the show.
Thank you very much, Izzy. I was just complaining to Ian earlier. I'm like, no one appreciates me here.
Well, I do, Zack. And I'm very happy to be back on the show. I've missed you.
I've missed you too.
Our listeners. So thank you so much for putting together this lovely playlist and for having a chat with our listeners and myself about all things polystyrene, beetles, burrowing
Giant cockroaches. Yeah.
All things really, really interesting.